south of Scruffy.
An ex-girlfriend said, "You wake up at the crack of noon every day and try to decide what color, black T-shirt you're gonna wear, play guitar with your stupid friends."
Man, that's why Steve Jobs and Zuckerberg, they all wear the same thing every day, so they don't have to like put any brain cycles towards getting dressed.
Yeah.
That's what you do with the black T-shirts.
Yeah, that and they're cheap. They look good with every guitar.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what color your guitar is.
That's true.
Black T-shirt always looks good.
Dude, I feel like Sam should be the one sitting in this chair over here. You guys speak the same language, man, with the music stuff.
Just dork language.
I love it.
It's like immediately everybody's like, "Are those the 600s?" Yeah. Oh man, that's great. I'm using the M4s. It's like what? It's like hanging out at a Dungeons and Dragons.
Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've been digging into your YouTube channel, and that's something that really that impressed me a lot, and I gravitated towards. Is like you're obviously this huge bank of knowledge, but you have a really good way of making the layperson understand it. It seems like, to me anyway.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that comes from the way that I learned music and the way that I was around music.
Really?
Yeah. My granddad got me started. And so, when my cousin is a fiddle player, we're the same age, and my granddad had no boys, and then two of his daughters had two sons. So when me and Brian turned 5, 6 years old,
you were the boys he never had?
Yeah, instruments in the hands. And so, long story short, we sat on the front porch, and my granddad didn't have, theory knowledge or anything like that. Any chord that wasn't a 1, 4, or 5 chord was considered the off chord.
Gotcha.
So that could have been literally any other chord in Western harmony. But I think it was the way that I learned that, and the way that I was always around music made me think about it. Especially when I became, my career started getting successful, and people started asking me questions. It would take me a second to reverse engineer how exactly I'm thinking about it. And so maybe that's a reason that some folks can steal a lick or two from my channel, or recording knowledge or whatever.
Do you know Gary Vaynerchuk? Have you heard that name?
Yeah,
before?
Gary V. Subscribe to him, man. Love him.
He's pretty. He's got some pretty amazing ideas and theories and all that. But what I've seen on your YouTube channel from talking to you before we started, really to me exemplifies one of his things, which is you're not just a musician, you're now a content creator. First, and then
it's funny because that term. I think you need to know this, and I think our viewers need to know this. I'm a huge video gamer, so a lot of that culture ends up being about 4 to 5 years ahead of every other form of pop culture, right? So they were doing quote unquote content creation almost a decade ago.
What do you mean? What kind of stuff?
Like when the YouTube channels first came out and things just started getting at the point where people could go buy an interface at home and a webcam. When that technology started becoming financially available for the average person,
gamers started doing it.
Gamers really latched onto it. And Twitch originally, if I'm not mistaken, Twitch originally wasn't meant for video games. It was just a way for anyone to stream. And it still is. You can get on there and talk about whatever you want.
Right.
But it's 95% gamers.
Yeah, Minecraft was the big one to start with, right?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's Minecraft, it's Destiny, it's Fortnite, it's any game that's a game, It's so anyways, that content creation term kind of always made my ears when a dog looks at a ceiling fan and it's like, what? That's how I feel when I was hearing that, because in reality, content creation has been around since people been making records. Steven Spielberg is technically a content creator.
Sure.
It's just his content is way better than everybody else's. It's
and he doesn't have to make as much of it.
Yeah. So, that term, when people started throwing that around, I was like, they're like, "Oh, have you ever thought about content creation?" I've been like, "Well, I've been making albums for years, so yes, I have thought about that." Ironically, I've actually been doing it, but it's the way that label has got latched onto things like podcasts, videocasts, streams and stuff like that. So I guess that caveat has always been like, I've already been doing this, right. But it's just in a different format.
Yeah, and you're making you've got your Patreon thing where you're doing a different thing than you're doing on YouTube, right?
Yeah, and
a little bit.
And because I'm a gamer, I just started my Twitch channel last week.
Nice.
So I figured I'm going to be on there playing whatever game I'm playing at the time. Might as well bring in the community and hang out. But yeah, it's like, so I do YouTube, which is different from making an album, which is different from what I do on Patreon, which is different from what I offer on my website. It's really just making anything that I'm involved with more of a communal kind of thing, like a tribal kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, anybody that's interested in what I do, you saw some clip on YouTube, I want to make it real easy for you to get tons more, And if you don't like it and you're a troll, cool. Keep rolling. It's like my channel's not for you.
Well, how did you grow it? Did you use quarantine to dig into the YouTube stuff?
Yeah, so I had been fortunate in that I was transitioning from, this is probably 2018-19. I had a very successful run as a hired gun for other big artists. And from there, I'd made my most recent solo record, which is called Junktown. And Junktown was really well received from the guitar community. And so at that point, I was already doing stuff for all the companies that I work for, like video content, right? I was doing videos for Sir or whatever manufacturer at the time. And so I was like, well, I should just, put something up on my channel. I had, a couple hundred subscribers on YouTube. I was like, I'll just put something up. And then I was talking to my friend Ben Eller, and he has a very successful YouTube channel. He's like, man, just try it out for a year. I had no idea that year was going to be
2020.
Yeah, so I started my channel technically in January. It would have been this time last year, before we had any idea of Cove and all that stuff, because NAMM was coming up, and I had some signature products coming out and stuff, and I had shows. So
is NAMM a trade show?
Yeah, it's a trade show for musicians, and it's in Anaheim, and it's a couple 100,000 people go to this thing. It's a huge event. Anyways, I was out there and I was doing shows, whatever, out there. And I was like, I'm going to start now, and just document some of my antics at NAMM. And then next thing you know, we're all in lockdown, and I'd already had a little bit of a head start. Now, I think it's also worth noting this wasn't just because I had some magic formula to getting this stuff to work. I had a lot of content on YouTube that was on everybody else's channels. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So did you aggregate all that and get it all together?
No, because a lot of it was like people at my shows with a cell phone camera. And like something else might be for Guitar World magazine, or something else might be over here for Sir or whatever. And I think having, my name already being in that YouTube loop, algorithm loop, when I started making stuff, gave me a little bit of an advantage of
there was a repository there of your stuff already
bingo.
That led them to your channel ultimately.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, people were already looking for my stuff.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I thought you were a bluegrass guy or played like the mandolin or something.
Well, my main instrument is the mandolin.
Is it really?
Yeah, I grew up playing. That's the granddad thing. My main instrument is the mandolin.
So where'd all that come from? Did you grow up here?
I grew up in Western North Carolina, but I moved to East Tennessee when I was 15.
Where in Western North Carolina?
Like over towards Asheville.
Okay.
It's like the same thing as here, just like 90 miles the other way. You know what I mean? Like across the state line.
Yeah.
Anyways, my granddad got us playing fiddle tunes and Kenny Baker and Bill Monroe and all this stuff. And when I was about 16 years old, I'd bought a Mark O'Connor record, because if you're in bluegrass, that's like, he not only is Mark great, but he had Jerry Douglas and Sam Bush, Bela Fleck, all these guys. So I was buying records, to learn. And I'd got the new Nashville Cats, and there was a song called Pick It Apart, and the guitarist's name was Brent Mason. And that solo changed my life in a lot of ways, because at that point I pulled out my electric guitar that I'd never played and was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And at that point, the Brent Mason thing led to the Eric Johnson, led to the Eddie Van Halen, led to, all that, the floodgates were open
Sure.
at that point. So yeah, it's like I have a career as an electric guitar player, and people think it's electric guitar, but I didn't really take electric guitar serious till I was 17 or 18 years
Really?
old. Yeah.
And you said your cousin's a fiddle player?
Yeah.
So did your granddad play the guitar? You played the mandolin, and your
Yeah.
cousin played the fiddle, and you guys had a little bluegrass trio going?
That's it. And we all three could kind of play. We would swap the instruments.
Cool.
So I would play guitar, rhythm guitar for my cousin and my granddad while they would do twin fiddles, things like that. My cousin would play rhythm guitar for me if I wanted to play.
That's awesome.
So we had that thing built in, and my granddad's still alive. He still plays.
No way.
My cousin plays. He's had a very successful career as fiddle player for Travis Tritt for 12 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, we were very, very lucky to come up in that kind of musical family, and then even more fortunate that both of our careers did well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you move here?
It was the summer of my sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
So it was
It's a tough time to move.
Yes, but
New friend group.
I had job opportunities in high school to play in the theaters in Pigeon Forge.
Oh, nice. Is that where that? So were you playing bluegrass music at the Dixie Stampede or the?
It's funny you say that, but yes, I worked in the open. I worked in the opening show of Dixie Stampede. I worked for Billy Baker at the Old Smoky Hoedown. I subbed some at Country Tonight. Just kind of all of those theaters and places. I'd always done work, and it was cool. My high school principal knew that as we got closer to summer, there would be matinees, so they'd let me leave early to go do those gigs.
That's awesome.
And because of that, at the Old Smoky Hoedown, there was a guy named Jimmy Green. Jimmy Green was a guitar player. I was only playing acoustic guitar and mandolin. And he was like, "Oh, man, your right-hand technique's amazing. I bet you listen to a lot of Paul Gilbert." And I was like, "I don't even know who that is." He's like, "Steve Morse." I was like, "No clue." Eric Johnson, no idea. So he made me a mixtape that had everything that I should know that I'd never heard because I wasn't into electric guitar.
Right.
And on that mixtape was, Eddie Van Halen's Eruption, Cliffs of Dover. It had everything on it. And Steve Morse's High Tension Wires, all that stuff. He was just like, here. And so at that point I was like, what is this witchcraft? How do you do it?
What is this sorcery? And how do I get involved myself?
Yeah. So then, it was a snowball for sure.
I don't know. I know a lot of people who cross over different genres of music, but I can't think of a lot of, bluegrass guys that like to shred like Eddie Van Halen when I think about it. I just that's not on my radar. So when I saw you playing the electric guitar on your YouTube channel, I was like, wait, this is the wrong guy here. I was thinking of a bluegrass guy.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Like I would think that the dexterity that you have on the little small mandolin, the small fretboard, everything's in a little, compressed case. It seems like when you expand that to an electric guitar fretboard, some of it would cross over. It's not like it's all for naught learning to play the mandolin.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? I mentioned in passing that I play rhythm guitar for my granddad and my cousin. So I only knew the cowboy chords way down here.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how much that was just helping me fundamentally, foundation, rhythm, strong rhythm, strong, so like that was laying the groundwork, and the mandolin thing, and the acoustic guitar thing are super fundamental to my right hand technique on electric, which is what most people ask me about. And it's because on mandolin you have no sustain. So you only get maybe one note and a pull off.
Yeah.
You can't do like a violin player, for instance, and play all these notes. Can't do like electric guitar player like Steve Vai and just hit one note and walk it down.
Right.
So I had to pick everything. So that transitioned to guys on electric guitar that literally picked every note. Steve Morse, Eric Johnson, the guys that picked a lot, their music made a lot of sense to me. Like when I heard Cliffs of Dover, it's not that far away from a fiddle tune. Just take that main melody and it's not that far away from something like Red Haired Boy,
Yeah.
And that's really not that far away from Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, really. When you think about the like that's all in the same kind of wheelhouse,
It's fun to watch those guys play the same song in like 10 different genres. Yeah, it's amazing how close it is. How close,
A lot of it's in delivery. And I use this in my instructional videos a lot. I'll say, it's the way a guy from Scotland, a guy from Australia, and a guy from East Tennessee all speak English, but it's not the same.
Right.
right? So that kind of delivery is what gives players like a perceived sense of versatility.
I get it.
To the listener. Mm-hmm. You know, because there's only 12 notes.
Right.
You got to remember, there's only 12.
Right. So you got to find a dialect.
Yeah.
A tool and a dialect to use.
And the accent and the delivery, you know, it's like the same kind of scale that would be used in a Roy Nichols solo on a Merle Haggard record isn't that far from Stevie Ray Vaughan's Texas Flood. And that's not that far from Steve Morse's Stress Fest, you know, so on and so forth.
It's amazing to think about. There's only 12 notes.
Yeah. in Western music, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the first, so you said you got a pro gig when you were 16 or 17 years old.
16, yeah.
16. Was your first paying music gig?
Yeah.
And then was it pretty clear then that you were going to go into music? Were you like all in on music at that point? As a career?
That's a great question. I was doing it because I was making great money to be in high school.
Yeah.
And when you're in high school, you have no overhead.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to buy this car and do all this stuff to it. And like, the reality was, it was really that falling in love with the electric guitar that made me shelf the idea of anything else.
And that all came from the mixtape?
Yeah. I mean, you know, my family, of course, had always, you know, musicians were always talked about in the house, but it's when I really got to studying and taking in that love for guys like Brent Mason and Dan Huff and Landau. Like when I fell in love with their playing internally, that's what changed my life, because I'd heard those names a lot in my house. You know, I was just like, cool, whatever. And then like when it clicked for me, that's when I was like, well, I'm just going to do this and see how far it'll go.
Well, that's been going on for 20 years now.
Yeah, it's going pretty good.
What's interesting is it takes, you know, there's so many bands out there struggling to make it happen and struggling to get a paying gig. And, you know, it seems like it's obvious you had some talent from a very early age, and you've been able to sustain that for quite some time. And I think it's probably, I mean, it's obviously because of your chops and because of merit and all that, but are you pretty grateful that it's been able to?
Oh, it's an understatement of the century.
Yeah.
Like that, like, I mean, I can think of 3 or 4 great moments where it's just like, I can't believe this is really happening. Mm-hmm. One was when I won the Guitar Center thing and was able to get my granddad a $10,000 Martin. That's what I did with the prize money.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, so when you say you won the Guitar Center thing?
There was a competition that used to be held through Guitar Center. So you get to know that Guitar Center's changed hands multiple times. But when they first started out, they were holding this big contest, and it was nationwide. And my buddies entered me on a joke, and there's like 3,400 contestants.
They
across
signed
the
you
country.
up
Yeah,
to rib you?
They're like, Andy's the best, he'll win.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, rah, you know, just being stupid, you know. And so they entered me, and I went in, and it was a tiered contest that lasted over the course of 3 or 4 months, right? It started on your store, and then if you scored high enough, you went to your region, then you went to the finals, whatever. So over the course of the competition, they give you, you know, as you win, you're getting free guitars and pedals and amps and stuff. And at the end, there was, you know, a big prize. It was held in Las Vegas, the finals, where it was me and 7 other contestants. And the competition was the opening act for Cheap Trick at the House of Blues in Vegas. Have you ever been to the House of Blues in Vegas? Yeah, it's very cool.
Mandalay Bay?
Yeah, that's it. So that was the final thing, and I couldn't believe that I won when that happened. And of course, there was a time change. I called my granddad, called my mom and dad, and I was like, I won. It's so crazy, you know.
They're like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. What? So, and my granddad wasn't even really familiar with the competition. He's like, so what happened now? You know, it's like, anyways, long story short, I took the prize money and I bought my granddad a D45.
That's amazing.
And when Guitar Center had told Martin what I was doing, Martin actually sold me the D45 that's in the catalog from that year.
No way.
And so it has the CF Martin down at the 12th fret. And like, it's this kind of, it shouldn't have been $10,000. It should have been a lot more.
Yeah.
But they liked the story.
It's a great story.
Yeah. So that's one of those moments. Another moment is with my granddad, of course. And that was my mom and my grandparents came to the Grand Ole Opry the first time I was playing it. And so seeing my granddad stand where Hank Williams stood was amazing.
Who were you playing with?
Rascal Flatts.
Okay.
Yeah, I was playing with those guys, and that was a great moment. And since then, I think I'm going to scope out and just say a great moment has been having Brent Mason's letter that I wrote to him, and he wrote me back when I was a 16-year-old kid. And then this past year doing a gig with Brent and meeting him and some of that stuff. It's just like, and becoming friends with guys that I've looked up to for a long time, guys like Andy Timmons, guys like, Joe Bonamassa and Paul Gilbert. And it's like, there's always still this weird, like, I can't believe these guys are my buddies. Like when, you're texting and talking guitar, calling each other, whatever. So like, that's been one of those moments that's like, man, I would have never thought that I would have been able just to pick up the text and be like, hey, AT, what octafuzz were you using? And him hit me back. It's like, so like that's been that other kind of like, I can't believe this is real. Like to watch Brent Mason ask me what amp I was playing through. And he was like, hey man, I think I'd like to get one. Could you connect me? And I was like, your heroes aren't supposed to buy your gear. You're supposed to buy your heroes gear, So that was definitely those kind of things have become, I don't like to say normal, but it's like every night after those types of gigs are those moments of gratitude where it's like, I can't believe this happened today, Do
you remember your first moment where you kind of got, I don't know if it was starstruck or if you're like, I'm playing in the same, sandbox as this guy who I've idolized and looked up to?
Yeah, there's been a couple where it's like been, okay, mentally like, what now? Like, so I can't remember the first one. Obviously, those Rascal Flatts gigs were pretty crazy. When I first started doing those, they were a bit surreal. We were doing a run in Vegas that kicked off the situation. And to be honest, it was kind of funny because I got thrown to the wolves in a lot of ways in that when that gig came about, they had previously been playing with the same band, for 12 years, 13 years. So I came in and for the listeners that don't understand, Rascal Flatts records are very in depth. Most pop country records are in that they'll have, 7 or 8 different guitar parts on them. So I didn't realize that Jodon liked to play maybe this part for the verse, and then he'll switch to another guitar part for the chorus. So he's not playing the same guitar's part the whole time. And that makes sense because he's the lead guy, like one of the lead guys. So when I went in to learn it, I was like, which guitar, like, what am I supposed to learn?
Stop changing.
Yeah. So the reality was, they had worked with the same guys so long, they had their formula. So when me and the other new guy came in, it was definitely like, drinking from the fire hose of information. You're just like, I don't know what to do. Long story short, we get off and running, and we're in Vegas, and one night Vince Neil comes, and he wants to get on stage and sing Kickstart My Heart, and they look over to me, and they're like, Wood, do you know this? I was like, I absolutely know this. And I'm ready. Put me in, coach, right now. So I got to do the big wall. I got to do the really cool Kickstart My Heart with Vince Neil, and it was unbelievable. So that, and then throughout that tour, guys like Steven Tyler would come to gigs, Brian McKnight or whatever. So it was like, that's when I was like, this is just another level, And then when it got personal for me was when there was a moment here in Knoxville that I have to, it's going to stay with me forever. Sam Bush was playing the Bijou, and as obviously being a bluegrass mandolin player as a kid, that was my idol.
Sure.
Like I long before the electric guitar was even a thing, I was too busy trying to become Sam Bush if I could, So, and I'd seen Sam countless times. I don't even know how many times I've seen him. But his bass player played with me when I did my show at the Bijou, and we filmed it. And he was working on that set, and Sam goes, man, who is that guy? Todd's like, it's Andy Wood. I was like, he plays mandolin, plays electric guitar, and all stuff. Sam's like, it's so cool. Sam comes to the Bijou in Knoxville, and I was there, and he's like, bring your mandolin. And he called me on stage. I got to play 9-pound hammer with Sam at the Bijou. And I was like...
Did you really?
I was like, he looks at me, and he's like smiling and nodding and doing his thing, and he's into it. And I was just like, what is happening? So that was super, super amazing. That was one of those moments. It's just like, what?
Sammy Bush is a pro, man.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best. And if anybody watches my channel... any of my content, I always start with the sentence, "Hello, music lovers." Mm-hmm. And that's an homage to Sam, because that's what Sam says at his shows.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, if anybody knows, I hope they know that this is a tip of the hat, and a little subtle kind of
Easter egg.
Yeah, a little subtle Easter egg for, my earliest hero,
Was he in John Hartford's band?
They were all so intertwined. It depends on which record you're looking at.
Maybe Aeroplane or Aeroplane or something like that.
So that era, especially live with the Telluride and all that stuff, it's like I can't remember who officially was members of what, because everybody was playing on each other's stuff. It's like Jerry Douglas was never in Newgrass Revival.
Really?
But he played with Newgrass all the time. Like Newgrass Revival was technically, if I'm not mistaken, Pat Flynn, Sam Bush, Bela Fleck, John Cowan. And so then everybody else, like Tony Rice might play with them tonight, or like Jerry Douglas is playing with them. It's like, so you never know what that kind of thing would evolve into. So,
what do you think of Billy Strings?
I think Billy's great. I think Billy has done something really great for bluegrass guitar in that he has taken it to not the bluegrass world.
Yeah.
We grassers like to keep things to ourselves. It's almost like this fraternal order or ownership or something. And Billy has taken it to deadheads. It's the closest thing to what David Grisman and Jerry Garcia were doing back in the 70s.
Yeah. I talked to Sammy McAteer about that too, about the Grisman and Grateful Dog type stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And about how some bluegrass purists kind of poo-poo it a little bit, because it might not exactly be what people knew to be bluegrass.
Right, and I think that was far more common in the 70s in general. Like, I don't think Newgrass Revival was welcomed with open arms into the people that worshipped Flatt and Scruggs and Don Reno.
Yeah.
However, now it's quite different because of, what Dale McCurry and Traveling McCurry's have done with their brand, and they've embraced all these different formats of bluegrass. Like I think their festivals and their events and their concerts having Billy on it is a big reason Billy spiked popularity.
Yeah.
And tie-dye shirts and long hair and covering Grateful Dead tunes.
Yeah.
I think he's great. I have to give a big shout out to Trey Hensley.
Who's that?
It's from Rob Ike, so it's Rob and Trey. And fabulous flat top picker. Jake Workman, he plays Ricky Skaggs. These are all guys that are like relative to our age, and just doing really great things with bluegrass guitar. Molly Tuttle is another one I would really
know that name.
Yeah, Molly is a great David Greer-esque style player, where it's almost like the melody and the cross picking and the rhythm are intertwined.
Gotcha.
Like you can just hear Molly play by herself, and it's really magic. It's like Dave Greer,
Gotcha. All those are flat pickers that you just mentioned?
All flat pickers, yeah.
That might be my favorite kind of, bluegrass acoustic guitar, man. It's just such a distinct sound. And like you say, with the sustain on an electric guitar, I think it was Derek Trucks who said, like, the most technical player is not the best player in the world.
That's right.
He said, I've seen B.B. King have somebody on stage that just,
yeah.
tears it up, and then B.B. plays one note and it's the most slays him dead.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's in delivery, right? And I think that's what we all look for, is something that makes an emotional connection to us. And I think what B.B. King could do with one note, I think Eddie Van Halen could do with Eruption. And I just saw a photo of them hanging out day before yesterday.
Really?
Yes, really great photo, and a lot of these photos have been coming to light. Same with Tony Rice. Like, when Tony Rice came out, bluegrass guitar wasn't very much of a lead instrument. Like maybe Charlie Waller, maybe before Tony, Clarence maybe. But like Tony really was the one that like made it like a superstar lead instrument, right? And Tony was a notey player.
Yeah.
He played a lot of notes. But the caveat is Tony had that thing that spoke to everyone. And it's almost like an intangible thing. Like there's God knows how many lesson tutorials there are on YouTube, how many channels like Champlay and True Fire where you can learn how to play guitar. But one thing you can't learn how to do is to transcend your instrument and turn it into a voice that speaks to someone else on an emotional, subconscious level. Derek Trucks, B.B. King, Clapton, the greats, Brent Mason, like they all have that thing. And once you know where to put your fingers, you realize how low on the mountain you really are. Like that just gets you on the mountain.
Exactly.
You know, the rest of the mountain is trying to figure out what to say.
Yeah.
I compared it to a student the other day. The student was really wanting to learn all this stuff. And I was like, well, what is it that you're not able to say? And I had him just keep breaking down. I was like, okay, just play me 4 notes and tell me a story. He's like, no, I need more. I was like, no, you don't. You don't, because you don't. You know what I mean? And so I told the student the other day, I was like, let's look at it this way. If you had all the money in the world, like let's say you were Elon Musk rich, and you were so rich that you built your own car line, and so rich that from there you started a space program and you launched your own car into space. Let's say you're that rich. What would you go buy? Because now nothing's off limits. Now compare that to your musical abilities. If you could literally play anything, you could blast out Rachmaninoff on every instrument. Let's say you were unsealing, no roof on the technical ability, your prowess. What would you choose to play then? You know, and that gets into a very existential question about like, well, where did Layla come from? Because it's quite simple. You know, where did Melissa by the Allman Brothers? These are great moments in music, like Pinnacle Mountain, Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac. You know, these are pinnacle moments in musical history that don't require that level of facility. So you have to think about it like that. Like it's more important what you choose to say than what you can say.
What is it? Like Travis Wyrick said, T-O-N-E tone. That's what, you know.
I think that's only one part of it. To me, music is made up by tone and or sound, right? The tone of something. This, 2 different tones, right? It's made up of tone, it's made up of rhythm, and it's made up of harmony. You can't have just one of them, to me.
So what's the transcendent part, though?
I think that's the human aspect when you can truly see an individual in their play. I think that's very much like art.
Do you think vocals are the same way, too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything is. I think the voice is just another instrument. You know, when you look at a Spielberg film, let's go back to him, it's got that familiarity. There's something in Spielberg's work that makes it immediately, you're just like, oh yeah, Spielberg.
Yeah.
Same way with Van Gogh, you know, or any painter from across history that we look up to. They transcended their medium, really, and there's no way to put that into a vernacular or grammar. Like you can't do it. You just know it when it's there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where artists tend to go off into hippy dippy land, and people are like, get a real job. You know, it's like it's because we're looking for something that's on another plane of connection, right? And your answer for what makes it the thing and what makes you feel something is going to be completely different than mine. It's going to be completely different than Wyrick's, because we're all going to get that feeling when it happens, but the same person may not give it to us.
Makes good sense. Do you feel like you've found your voice, your vision, or do you feel like you found it, or are you still searching for it?
I think I'll always search for it.
Okay.
With that said, I think I have embraced what makes my music my music.
Yeah.
If you listen to my first record, outside of 1 or 2 traditional songs that are played on the mandolin, everything else was played at a very complicated level for the sake of complexity. There was tunes in time signatures of 11. They were being played through diminished scales the entire time, almost like I was trying to prove myself to my peers, rite of passage type stuff. And I was like, look at all this stuff that I can do. However, my most recent album is the one that's most well received. And I used to kind of try to tuck away the bluegrass and the country influences and be like, no, I can do so much more than that. And like, I've realized that embracing those bluegrass and country influences, even if there's distortion and it's on a rockin' tune, that's where my voice lies. And I think embracing that Eddie Van Halen and Tony Rice unity is like what is where I live. Now, with that said, I'm always going to look for a way to get better at that delivery, you know?
Yeah. you teach too quite a bit, right?
I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher.
Are you a guru? Are you a guitar guru?
I don't know. That's a tricky question because I make courses for companies like TrueFire.
Gotcha.
And
yeah, you mentioned that some of these manufacturers hire you. Is that what they hire you to do?
Yeah, so I have an endorsement with several manufacturers, and usually what that turns into is, whether it be a revenue share on products sold or signature product or, whatever. It's like at that point in turn, I'm doing videos and trade shows and, repping the brand,
right.
Accordingly. And that's a whole different conversation. But TrueFire is a company in Florida that they make, tuitional stuff. And it's great. It's multi-camera angle. They do the tablatures. You could slow it down. You could do all this stuff. And I do take private students in, online, like Zoom, Skype style students. But they're booked a la carte because I don't teach a lot. And and I charge a lot because that time that I'm devoting to a master class is time that I could be putting into an album or some other form of, looking for it.
Yeah, it's opportunity cost.
Yeah, it's opportunity cost. So with that said, if someone wants to pay my rate, which is higher than, most, or higher than one would expect.
Right.
If someone wants to pay that, then I try to give them everything I can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And really help them out. But it's weird because I don't consider myself a teacher. I consider myself an artist first.
Sure.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What about the guitar camp that you did last summer?
The Woodshed Guitar Experience. It was it kind of happened because, again, to not be a teacher, I have this rule of don't teach kids. Like it's just a flat rule. I do not teach kids. Have a guy come to me. He's like, "Oh, my son, Hudson is getting into guitar and he loves." I was like, "I'm not the guy, man. I'm gonna yell at him." And,
it's John McCready.
Yes, John McCready. I was like, "I'm definitely not the guy." And he goes, I was like, "What's he listen to?" And he's like, "He listens. He's really into Bonamassa." And I was like, "Okay." He's really into B.B. King. I was like, Freddie King. I was like, okay, so this kid likes stuff that's not just flash in the pan, popular today, gone tomorrow type of music. That intrigued me. And so I started working with Hudson. And of course, it went exactly like I said. Like I was like, you don't practice, you don't do this. Like, what are we doing? It's like you're not applying yourself. I'll hang out with you, but like this is like we're talking about what we so it started like that. And then a year later, Hudson has really developed as a player. And it's been nice to watch him, develop. In the meantime, in that course, John's like, "Man, you should do a camp, It's like, you'd be great at it." And I was like, "I don't even know." I do camps when people hire me, right? Like I'm doing one with John Petrucci from Dream Theater, and I've done camps with other companies and stuff. I was like, it's not for me. That's not a thing that I'm into. And John was like, "Well, what would it take?" And I was like, "Well, first of all, it'd have to be a lineup that nobody would expect. It's like it'd have to be guys that are only important to me." I was like, the only way I'll do this is if it's selfish.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
I was like, I'd only do this if it's something I would go see. A lot of times camps, whether like Steve Kaufman in Maryville does a camp, it's only bluegrass guys. And it's amazing. It's the best, but like it's only bluegrass guys. I was like, my lineup is going to be all over the place. I was like, I'm going to have, and John's like, "Well, who would be the lineup?" And I was like, Brent Mason has to be there. I was like, I'd want Bonamassa to represent the blues and the evolution and the tone thing. I was like, I want Andy Timmons because he's got the tone of the gods. I was like, Mark Lettieri's playing all this funk stuff with Snarky Puppy. I was like, I want Greg Koch because he can. I was like, I want all these guys that don't go together. John's like, all right, let's make it happen. I was like,
you got to be careful talking to that guy.
Yeah. And he's like, let's make it happen. So come to find out, there was a lot of people that wanted that lineup.
Yeah.
And it was a big success. We had a great time. All the artists had a great time. We had an amazing house band. We had, great sound, great production, of course. And everyone, it was a 3-day event. It's out in Middle Tennessee, and we're looking at what the possibilities of doing it again are going to be.
Yeah. So what did it look like? How many kids or was it kids or adults?
It was majority adults.
Okay.
With a couple of outliers of kids.
Okay. How many people came?
In the 60s.
Wow.
But we had to be very careful
Yeah.
because of Cove.
Yeah. It was outdoors, right?
Yeah, and there was 3 like stages. If you've ever been to Merle Fest, it was like Merle Fest but smaller.
Okay.
Like 3 stages and 3 areas. And we had the instructors had to do it in cycles. So we taught classes of like 10 or 15 people.
Gotcha.
And we taught the same class.
What an opportunity of a lifetime for these campers.
Oh, it's unbelievable. What an opportunity for all of us. That's one thing we were saying. We were all hanging out one night, just the guitar players. And, you know, it's, if you know Greg Koch, he's got this huge personality and this big, you know, comedic way. And you know, Mark and I and Joe and Brent and Andy, we're like, why aren't we paying to be here? This is amazing, you know? It's like, because we all say the same things. Usually when you're put on a festival, it's like, all right, it's this kind of artist. And you're here because you can do this kind of thing. And there it was like the differences were being celebrated in the music.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what was the most fun. And in that, on one of the things that I said, I was like, one night, everybody has to play 3 or 4 of their signature songs in a concert format, because I would be mad if I came to see Brent Mason and he didn't play Hot Wired. I'd be like, I want the one that, you know, same with like Andy Timmons and he didn't play Cry for You. I'd be like, so one night everybody plays their signature tunes. The night that's before that, I said, we all get on stage like a bar gig and we call out the songs and we just jam. They were like, that sounds awesome.
So who was playing drums and bass and all that stuff?
Drummer was a guy named Jim Riley. He's been on the cover of Modern Drummer, 5 or 6 times.
So you had some other instrumentalists there, not just guitarists.
And studs, man. Just studs. Like Adam Nitty was on bass, and he's one of the fusion, primo fusion players. Travis Toy on steel and banjo. And it was unreal. Like I was like, I'm on stage playing White Room with Greg Koch, and and then we did Never Make You Move Too Soon with Joe Bonamassa. I was like, this is awesome, you know? So yeah,
that's super cool, man.
And so it was infectious. That's one thing that Joe said to me. He was like, you know, the energy from watching all of the players watch each other was like so infectious to the crowd, because they could see how. Again, I think that ties into what we were talking about earlier. That intangibility. That's what made the bluegrass stuff so special. When it was Tony Rice and Sam Bush and stuff, they were like, "Holy cow, we're so good!" You know, it's like they're stunned at it. You know, And when you watch, you know, Brent Mason take a chicken picking solo, you're just jaw on the ground. You know.
So, do you think that? I mean, like, this podcast has strangely benefited from COVID and people like you being able to be available to come over, you know, because they're not traveling. Do you think some of that happened with the guitar camp? I
don't know. I don't know, because I actually think that if we allowed more, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think with the COVID thing, the reason I think all digital mediums increased in views and eyeballs and stuff being on it, you know, not just this not just quote unquote podcast. I think that's probably ties into like literally every form of digital medium. I mean, like last year, you know, you look at video game views and revenue was through the roof. Like Fender had a record year of guitar sales.
Really?
Like, how is that possible? It's because everybody's stuck at home. Everybody's glued to their screens.
And I guess what I mean is like, Eric Baker would usually be on tour and not able to come over here and sit down. And Chris Blue, for instance. And then there's a guy.
Well, you could do these things remote at that point.
I know, but I don't really want to. Like, some of the podcasts.
That's on you.
I know. And it's a quality thing. And that's a bigger conversation. But like, there's some podcasts that I listen to. It's 2 people having a phone conversation, and I'm just pulled out of it immediately.
Yeah, usually, I won't say usually. One of the things that I make sure when I do the remote type of hang in any format is that the audio is great.
Yeah.
And the good thing with dealing with guitar nerds is usually
they've got the gear.
Yeah, they've got the gear, you know.
And they know how to use it.
I definitely wouldn't be like, "Hey Eric, man, what kind of interface you using for your reverb bus?" So, you know, so Eric would be like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I love him though. We Eric and I usually chit chat you know, once a month or so, just small talk and hope you're doing well. I talked to him, I guess, right before Christmas, and he touched base. And, you know, I saw Cruise not too long ago. It's like you're saying, it's like everybody's just kind of Yeah, and kind of around. You
Yeah,
know?
I had all those guys over like right in a row, right, just kind of in the thick of quarantine, and they're like, "Now's a great time to do it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can't be on the road." And I don't know, has that been tough to not have the
Extremely.
touring stuff going?
Yeah, I didn't realize how much of my mental health was on making something that's not normal the norm. I mean, I've toured professionally for 7-8 years, and I mean that's like. When I say professionally, I don't mean like in a van touring professionally. I mean like on a bus, like mega tours.
Yeah,
like
Rascal Flats.
Yeah, all those big tours. I mean, like God. I mean, there's been 5 or 6 artists that I've toured with, and then my own stuff. So it's like that interaction on I would even say weekly basis. If I only got to play 1 or 2 shows a week. That interaction to an audience and delivering something live and organic in the moment that can't be recreated, that wasn't punched in, that wasn't edited, that thing was so therapeutic to me. No matter what would be going on in my life, no matter what kind of problems the real world would present, that was always like this escape. And not being able to do that has been very challenging. Now, I don't want to sound like it's poor, pitiful me, but I mean, I guess just to be very honest, it's like, that can really wreck your mental health. You know, you think about what COVID has done to everyone's mental health.
Yeah, I remember seeing the numbers of like domestic violence goes up. You know,
everything. I mean, you got to think
everything's
people are sitting around drinking their blues away,
Yep.
and like, gosh, could you imagine if you healthcare worker and you're pulling these 18-hour shifts?
Right.
I mean, like, yes, so people definitely have way bigger fish to fry than I do. But when you ask about has it affected me? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where I've delved into creation and at making albums. I've got enough songs. It's like now I don't know what to do because I've got 4 albums worth of songs.
Really?
And I just don't know what to. It's like
That's great.
Yeah, but it's like I'm ready to get in a studio, and the way I like to record is more organic. You know, I don't want to do it remotely.
I've talked to musicians that have had the opposite of being able to put together a back catalog during COVID, or being able to get inspired to make music too. So that's awesome to see that it has enabled you and emboldened you to create and create more instead of stymied you.
That's a choice. I really believe this. Not to discount anyone who approaches life differently, but I think that happiness, and to me, making music is a big part of my happiness. I think that's a choice. You wake up every day, you choose to go down and put your butt in the seat. And the thing is like we get in our own heads, whether it be any line of work, we get in our own heads about everything has to be the most amazing thing ever. You know, it's like, nah, dude, just record 50 demos. And if they're 30 seconds long, then you've got 50 choruses. You choose from that. You know, and I talked to Dave Kennedy. He and I do the Kennedy Wood Band together. Unfortunately, that was hit really hard. We were at the end we were going into 2020 looking really good.
Really?
You know, oh man, that band was poised.
It was your year.
Yeah, we had just done a huge festival down in Florida, and we were booking agents had already bought dates and for festivals, and we were set. And anyways, Dave was like, "Look, let's do another Kennedy Wood record. Let's write." And on the first writing session, he was like, "I ain't writing no sad stuff." He's like, "The world has plenty of it. Every record's going to come out and be gloom and doom and sad. You know, that new Taylor Swift record is brilliant, but it's also like, it's just a downer.
Yeah.
It's just like it hurts. It's like, you know." And Dave's like, "We're writing feel good stuff," and we both were like, "What's the influence?" And Dave's like, "I want Doobie Brothers, Leonard Skinner, Little Feat." And I was like, "Yeah,
I'm down.
because it feels good.
Yeah.
Because that music feels good, you know." And he asked what I wanted. I was like, "Man, I just want the opportunity for the arrangements not to have to be in pop country format." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, look at Blue Sky by the Allman Brothers or Melissa. There's just random guitar solos wherever. There's the form can be what it needs to be, you know." And so we've got enough material. It's like all we have to do is just put some lyrics to a couple more tunes, and we could go in the studio and knock it out. But that's not really available right now, you know, in the way that I like to record.
What other projects? You got solo stuff. You've got the Kennedy Wood stuff. Any other projects?
Yeah, sessions. I mean, like I play on sessions a lot. So I actually
Is a lot of that work remote?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the industry has embraced it a lot more. Embraced the trust to the players
Without having a producer in the room or
yeah,
something like that.
So I had a couple of cool sessions, got to play on some pop country. I don't know if I'm at liberty to say because I don't know if the records are even
Sure.
Yeah, but some high level artists and got to play on the new Liam Neeson movie. Did the guitars for that. So
did some like scoring?
No, it wasn't scoring. It was tunes that
Okay.
were going to be like the featured tunes.
Nice.
Yeah, so I got to do some guitars for that. However, I did get to do the score last year with Jay DeMarcus. He's done the scores for some of those real campy, like Sharknado type movies. I got to do one where the wrestlers are they get bitten. They take steroids, it turns them into zombies.
Nice.
So I got to just do 7-string chugging and wah and Tom Morello sounds.
So are you watching the screen?
Yeah.
And laying down tracks?
And
Is that fun?
It was so challenging because typically you have a
click track?
Yeah, and this is like, all right, when he punches that guy, that's when we start doing, So that was, you're playing out of time.
Yeah. It's kind of seems like a different kind of discipline, and I know that a lot of actors also used to get hired because of their looping work or their what's it called when they have to come back in and do the voice that they did before. I can't believe I'm blanking on that. What's it called?
Voiceover?
ADR. Audio dialogue replacement.
Yeah.
But a lot of actors get work because they're good at that part of it, which is coming back in and you're not working any kind of click, any kind of framework. You're just intuitively know when to make the sound or when to, and I would think that would be the same with music. It's different when you're not playing to a click or playing with a band.
Yeah. It was super funny too because the movie on screen that we were playing to is like zombie wrestlers. So it's outside of that, you just something would happen, you just start laughing. You're just like, well, but that was cool. As far as other projects, man, I mean, I'm doing as much as we all can. I think I'm fortunate that I've got enough to keep.
Yeah.
Like I'm having to tell people no. You know
really?
what I mean? Yeah.
That's nice.
So that's a good thing, but it doesn't make the year any better.
Right.
Like I lost two of my heroes.
Yeah. Who are they?
Eddie Van Halen and Tony Rice.
Really.
And then guys that I looked up to, like Joe Diffie died, and I can't tell you how many Joe Diffie records I went through listening to Brent Mason solos.
Really?
Yeah, I did a whole episode on Joe Diffie on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, for the guitar players that didn't realize that the guitar playing is white hot. You know, in those records. Yeah. And, so.
Both of those guys that you mentioned, Eddie Van Halen and Tony Rice, I didn't realize, and it's a shame, but I didn't realize how many people that both of those guys influenced and affected until they died.
Yeah.
And then you start to see, like, people I had no idea even knew who Tony Rice was that really respected and looked up to the guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hate that that's what it takes sometimes.
Well, that, and I think with Tony, he was in a different level than Ed because the nature of Tony's genre almost garnered that kind of cork sniffer approval. Oh, he was an acoustic player with a finesse. And I think, in my opinion, a lot of people blow off Ed as like, oh, his hair metal.
Yeah.
The reality is Ed's got more in common with Les Paul, really, because you look at literally anybody that plays a Stratocaster style guitar with a humbucker in the bridge, that's Ed Van Halen. Literally any amp that has high gain distortion, Ed Van Halen. Like he did it with a Variac that you control the wattage.
The voltage? Yeah.
The voltage. Yeah, he put that on the amp and turned the Variac down to like 80 volts, 85 volts.
Really?
And it would allow the amp to saturate more. And so literally any rock band after that, any manufacturer, like you're talking companies that have Mesa Boogie. Yeah, no Mesa Boogie without Eddie Van Halen.
So it's innovation.
It truly is. So it's like
you can't lump those guys in with just hair metal when they're when manufacturing.
Yeah, engineering innovation. From the here's the other thing that I say is like with every guitar player that came after Ed, Guthrie Govan, Steve Vai, anybody, like there's things that we all take for granted that nobody made popular till Ed.
Right.
And here's the other thing. every sorority girl at University of Tennessee knows jump.
Yeah.
The moment the keyboards start.
Sure.
That transcends, hey, I'm really good at an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Like once it's like genuine pop culture, it's like a whole nother level. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's, for as much credit as Ed gets, I still think he's underrated. I still think it's not enough credit. Like to watch the VMAs air, we were talking about this outside, a month after he dies and they don't even acknowledge it.
Really?
Was unbelievable. To watch MTV VMAs, like your whole channel of MTV was built on the video to Panama.
Yeah.
That's
like, that seems like a blind spot there that they didn't include.
You didn't have 30 seconds of somebody. However, on Saturday Night Live, the week that Ed dies, Jack White plays an Eddie Van Halen guitar and had just a few seconds of tapping. Mm-hmm. We're talking Jack White, the guy that would be the antithesis to the Van Halen. But he knows that like none of it happened without Ed. And I think on the bluegrass side of it, Tony was to bluegrass guitar what Ed was electric guitar. Like nobody played that. Now it's like everybody sounds like each other, but nobody sounds like Tony.
That is very interesting to say that, because that's right.
Yeah.
It seems kind of homogenous.
Yeah. My stepdad says that Tony Rice impersonators are like Elvis impersonators. Like they all sound like each other, but none of them sound like Elvis, you know? And I'm guilty of it too. I'm fortunate enough that like Songbirds down in Chattanooga, the museum, they called me. They want me to come down tomorrow and film. They're doing a Tony Rice memorial thing where like they're getting all these old pre-war Martins out. And I'm going to go down there and I'm going to play some Tony Rice licks and not sound like Tony. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that is something that I adore, not something that I loathe.
Yeah.
It just shows that it's not in the notes. Everybody can learn the notes. It's just he sounded the way he did when he played it, you know.
That'll always be a mystery to me because it is intangible.
It's
like
intangible.
What the transcendent part of it. But you got me thinking about it a lot. What else? You got anything else fun coming up we need to know about?
Yeah, I mean, last year I could talk about all the things that didn't happen that are supposed to happen this year. Hopefully we'll, you know, if we can get a wrangle as a society, as a world, global society on Cove. Last year I was scheduled to go to Corfu, Greece, and there was a blues festival in Italy that I was playing, and all those things are like, well, we're going to put them in 21.
We'll
Hopefully
just swap the year. We'll just switch the year.
Out. Yeah. For any mega guitar nerds, I am doing the John Petrucci Guitar Universe in Irvine in May. As of now, we'll see how that goes. It's January, but that's going to be amazing because John Petrucci, Dream Theater. If you play guitar, it's like legend, you know what I mean? It's like, and he's having all these like really ripping players come. There's a gypsy jazz player, Joshua Stefan, and he's incredible. He's going to be there. I'm really excited about that. John loves lots of different styles of music, so he's got a lot of different styles players. Mateus Asado is going to be there. He's like a neo soul kind of player, and I'm representing, I guess, the southern side of things.
I love it.
Yeah. So
I'm glad to send you as our representative. Well, I hope it all picks back up and you can keep getting out there. But it sounds like you found a way to stay warm.
Yeah,
in the meantime.
That's right.
Yeah.
I hope it does. Not just for me, but for the fan of going to see an event. Like, I can't go see any shows. That sucks. I like live shows. I'm not even talking about like me going to play them.
Right.
Like, there's no concerts this year.
Yeah.
It really sucks.
Yeah. I try not to play the violin too much over it, but man, live music is my favorite, biggest hobby, going to see live music, and I really miss it. And I know that I have to say, okay, it's got to suck way worse for the artist because it's just a hobby for me. They don't get to do their livelihood or whatever, but I do miss it. And it's been the hardest hit industry
Easily.
With I mean, restaurants a close second. Restaurants are still open.
That's
a little bit. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't, and I'm using the proverbial you, not the literal you, but like maybe it applies to the literal you. I'm saying don't sell yourself short on saying it's way worse for the musician. Because it's not way worse for the musician. It's way worse for everybody. Mm-hmm. It's way worse for everybody who's not getting to experience that transcending thing that a guy on stage is doing a thing and it's touching someone in the audience. Like that takes both parties.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I want to be in the audience. Like, you know, when my favorite artists, when the Foo Fighters come to town, I'm at the Coliseum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same for, you know, Eric Johnson or Sam Bush come to the Bijou. I'm at the Bijou, you know? It's like, let's do this, you know? And I want that to come back for the truest, honest reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And hoping, I've got fingers crossed that it will put more value on it when it does return.
I think people are realizing that a live stream ain't the same thing.
Dude, I watched Marcus King, and I adore Marcus King.
At the Smoky Stadium?
I watched the live stream that was before the one he did in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, this guy rules.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was seeing it in person.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he gets done playing and there's crickets.
Yeah.
That's
weird.
That's weird. And I can tell you, I can't answer for Marcus, but I can answer for myself. I can't play nearly with the authenticity without an audience.
Mm.
And I've done the streaming concerts for various websites and stuff.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. And lots of viewers, lots of clicks, lots of upvotes.
Mm-hmm.
But that upvote, man, that's not the same. Dude.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I'm not a diehard Fish guy. They're one of my favorite bands to listen to and to go see. But I have heard Trey Anastasio talk about that a lot, which is, you know, we can't do it without a crowd. You know, we're giving them something, they're giving it right back.
That's right.
Where do you stand on that guy?
Trey?
Yeah.
I mean, he just, like, that sentence right there, I back him 1,000%. I could care less if he's good or bad. It's like he gets it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As far as a player, obviously he's amazing. It's like he's obviously amazing. Mm-hmm. But to me, the perspective that's what matters. You know what I mean? And because hot licks are just hot licks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not to blow them off and not
right.
but you realize just truly how many phenomenal freak show players there are in the world. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah, it may be 0.001% of the population that can play at that level, but when you're at that level, it's like, well, everybody's good. Now what? It's like, we're all here, you know.
You're Elon Musk level at that point, right?
Yeah, it's like if everybody's there, you get more concerned with what their energy is, what their show is, like you've got the horsepower, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you forget that everyone who drives a Formula One car, if there's 150 drivers out there, you forget that everyone there is better than the rest of the world at driving.
Yeah.
And the NFL, like everybody's an armchair quarterback. But you forget that, like, that's the 0.00001% of humanity playing that game.
Yes.
And so, like,
there's 7 billion people on the planet.
and there's, you know, those handful of franchises that represent, it's like, yeah, they're the best in the world. So, like, when you think about, and it's funny, guitar players are the world's worst to be like, oh, Luca, they're so much better than Ed. Oh, you know, Billy Strings has taken it so much farther than so-and-so. It's like, why are we doing this? It's like, you do realize that this is like such a small fraction of humanity that's ever lived that can play at that level.
Right.
So I think when you ask me what my thoughts are on someone like Trey, not even Trey specifically, it's like, yeah, man, obviously he's great. Like, that's a given. You know, for me, when I think of bands in that realm that I really adore, it's not a band, it's a guy. It's Jimmy Herring that plays for Widespread Panic. Mm-hmm. But I've adored Jimmy's playing for years, going back to Colonel Bruce Hampton.
Yeah. And what was the...
Frog Wings. Was that a song or a album or a group? I've got you know, stuff that came to me that's bootlegged, and you have no idea what it means.
It's just got the random words written
random
on
words.
it.
It's like, okay, this could have been what the guy had for lunch. I don't know.
That's the whole Athens scene, right? Like NRBQ and Widespread Panic. I guess REM was around the same time, different style, obviously, but that whole crowd. Colonel Bruce.
Yeah.
How about the way that guy kicked the bucket?
Everybody thought it was fake. My friend Emil Wursler was on stage with him.
Really?
Yeah. And Mike Seal, do you know Mike?
I've heard of Mike. I don't know him, but yeah.
Mike's great. I'll connect you to Mike. He's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
You'd love to have him on here. He's a great fingerstyle player. I think Mike was at the gig.
Really?
I think.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, yeah. Colonel Bruce had guys like Sean Lane with him. Steve Morse was in Colonel Bruce. It's like the guitar players that he had, you're just like, it is a lot like for the jam scene. Colonel Bruce was like the Merle Haggard of the jam scene because everybody that Merle had as a guitar player was freak show.
Yeah.
Like Roy Nichols, Clint Strong. It's like everybody that played for Merle was fabulous. Just like Colonel Bruce. It's like Colonel Bruce is a great player, but hey, by the way, check out this Steve Morse guy.
Yeah, surrounded himself with all-stars.
Yeah.
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 Well, Andy, I got to get you on the road, man. You got a session this afternoon.
I have a session this afternoon. I could sit and talk guitar for weeks at a time.
Well, I have to say that after hearing your name and digging into you lately, it's an honor to have you come over, man.
Oh, dude, I really appreciate it. It's fun for me to be here.
Good. I appreciate you doing it, and hopefully we'll do it again soon or sometime.
I'd love that,
Yeah,
dude.
cool.
I'd love that.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.